Welcome to the Self-Love Summit. I'm Mia Saenz, your host, and with me this segment is Lynn Moore. Yay! Welcome, Lynn.
Hey, hi everybody. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. Lynn and I got to spend a nice amount of time before chatting about our show, and so it's fun to have her back on because now I feel like, I've known this woman. We've had lunch together or something.
We've shown boobs together.
That's right, our cleavage.
You might want to dump that out, but just a bit of cleavage. We were having fun with somebody who was a little upset about cleavage, so we were just
Can
being
you
ourselves.
please share with everyone your journey of how you got to where you are?
Yeah, I'd love to. As a matter of fact, it's a little bit of a poignant part of my life, but I think everything that really is of magnitude in your life does have some poignancy to it.
Absolutely.
So let me just tell you a bit about the story of my mother's passing, which tended to do this for me. I was actually sitting by her hospital bed and watching her breathe as it was becoming more and more shallow and longer pauses between her breaths, and then they stopped, and I realized that she was gone. In the days following, I spent a lot of time going over my life with my mom and her personal history as I understood it before I was born. And I thought about things that I loved about her and things that drove me bats, quite frankly. And she actually lived a life that was fraught with all kinds of drama and trauma and struggle, but she soldiered on until about midlife, when she seemed to just give up and settle. She actually settled for less than what she deserved and less than what she could have had. And she became quite bitter and just full of the fears of lack and loss. Now, I swore I would never be like that, but we tend to know that what we resist persists.
Yes.
So, even though I also began living a life of trauma and struggle from having to make a life-altering decision at the age of 17, which is young to make life-altering decisions, and it was to either marry or give up a baby for adoption. It was those years where you had those options and that was it. Mm-hmm. So I chose to marry, and I had my baby and then another one at age 21. And I did also endure some emotional and physical abuse at the hands of my first husband. And then I was penniless and abandoned by him, and I divorced and was living as a single mother with 2 little girls on welfare, and I was at the grand age at that point of 22. So life-shattering events continued even after I remarried, and different people sexually molested my children and me as an adult, and our family dealt with alcoholism and drug abuse, to name some of them. So I got to midlife struggling with depression and migraines and stomach problems and relationship problems. And what did I do? I remained stoic and I soldiered on until I had a desire that was washing through me, just as strong as a tsunami, to just give up and settle for what I had left. So, with the example of my mother before me, I knew it was do or die time, and from somewhere, I found the courage to take a risk and not follow my mother's footsteps. I found a way to put myself at the front of the line. So, the story of my healing journey is for another time, but what came out of it is my undying passion to help women, especially career women, which was my mother too, in the second half of life, to never give up the search for their sole purpose and a sense of self on a deeper level, thus to discover who they are, what they really want, and how to go and get it. So I stand for them when they can't stand for themselves. And I'll just do this until I toddle off a stage somewhere at 100 years of age and die with a microphone in my hand. That's my goal.
That's a beautiful goal. Wonderful. I love that. That's to serve and to give for the rest of our life is so beautiful and enriching, and those of us who have been through deep journeys that have brought us to where we are, what else would we want to do? That is the magnificent piece, is to do exactly what you said. And you know, Lynn, you are so sweet. Lynn was one who brought in one of our experts because her heart is so giving and joyous. She just had to share people that she knows with everybody. She's very, very loving, so she's authentic that way. Thank you. You were talking about how you felt like a failure for a long time, and I know part of what you do is, and which you're going to share that too, please, all the wonderful things in detail that you do for your clients, but also how you help reverse the concept for women that they're failures, that they can be their own true heroes and everybody else's, which is really what you are, because you get in there feeling like at one point you had been a failure, and now, I'm not saying you feel the hero part because that would be ego, but but you are to us. So would you share about the work in detail, what you do with people, and about your concept about going from like failure to fantastic?
Yeah. Well, I really do feel that women and failure and self-love are quite a triangle. And I'm very proud to tell everyone that I am a remarkable failure.
I think that's so funny. It cracks me up every time you say that. Who else but Lynn can actually say that publicly? I'm a failure and I'm proud of it.
I'm proud of it. I have failed remarkably in all my roles. My roles as a daughter, a sister, an aunt, a girlfriend, a wife, a mother, a business owner, a grandmother. I should have a trophy cabinet full of failed remarkably awards.
Oh.
And this is how you turn that around. I've lived in poverty, in debt, in loneliness. I've hated. I've been fearful. I've been rejected. I've been guilty and angry and judgmental and all those things because I'm an human. I'm a human.
Right.
But I'm not all of those all at once, thank goodness. But without them, I could never have learned to also live in abundance and courage and wealth and peace and love and acceptance, faith and empathy, and in a peaceful sense of freedom. It's simply the law of relativity. And I like to use the story of the little candle living in the dark, this total darkness, and it just didn't know what it was, and it just sits there until its little wick is lit. So I have failed remarkably, and part of it is what makes me able to coach well, so I like to tell this little story about that wick. What happens when the wick is lit? All of a sudden the darkness goes away and the little candle can see the light and it can see who it is. So if I don't have the darker side of life, how can I really, really know the lighter side and the loving side of life? So a remarkable failure is a courageous person. They allow themselves to be vulnerable. This is a huge, huge word.
Yes.
And
it's a beautiful word.
It is. And when a person experiences something that they perceive as a failure and they feel ashamed, what they really have is an opportunity to practice vulnerability with authenticity. They can move through the experience without having to sacrifice their values and end up with more courage, more compassion, and more connection than before their experience of what they thought was failure.
Right.
So they move from failure to empathy. And in being vulnerable, we also create trust. Were it not for my own remarkable failures, how could I even remotely empathize with my clients? Because empathy is connection.
Right.
the marvelous Brené Brown, who wrote several books, but the one I love right now the most is called Daring Greatly. And it's all about shame and vulnerability. And she says that the ladder out of the shame hole is what it's all about. So that's what empathy is. She calls that the ladder out of the shame hole. I highly recommend everyone read that book. And she goes on to say that empathy is a simple acknowledgement saying you're not alone. It's an incredibly healing message. It's connecting with the emotion that someone is feeling, but not the event or the circumstances that caused it. So you're not in a judgment phase.
Right.
You're just in empathy. So when sharing your story of failure with someone who responds with empathy and understanding, any shame that you're feeling cannot survive. Mm-hmm. That's what a coach will do. Mm-hmm. This is one of the things I concentrate the most on, is having that empathy and allowing that shame to just not survive inside of you. So empathy and understanding are the antidote to shame. And that person the person you're telling your story to has earned the right to hear your story through his or her own courage to be vulnerable and their ability to hold a space for you to do the same. So basically, and lastly, is what we think of as failure is only and simply life lessons. We're on this planet to learn and grow in all ways, and this is how our spirits evolved. So we are having the experiences of living, not failing. Today, when I first opened my computer, I came across this was meant to be. I came across this quote. The fastest way to succeed is to double your rate of failure. And that's by Thomas Watson Sr., who took the IBM company to international heights from 1914 to 1956. So, yeah, this is what I do mostly with clients, is help them really get to know who they are on a deep level. They really don't know who they are, especially women, because they've been wearing all these hats and doing all these roles for so many years, and all of a sudden they're in their later years and they're thinking, oh my God, who am I? And I don't even know what I want, let alone how to go and get it.
Right.
So, clarity, knowledge, that's what it's all about.
That's wonderful. To break through like that is very, very powerful, and it's very important to, I think empathy also has love in it.
Oh, definitely.
For humanity, not even just for the people we know, or that we're working with, but just an overall love base from God,
Yes, and it is worldwide. It's for every living thing.
Yes, it's that unconditional love. Yeah, I love that. Another word you used that's very important and that people don't truly understand, and I think it's a bad word, is vulnerability.
Yeah.
And that's really, really beautiful. I remember after being married my whole life and in between my marriage now, when I found the first man that I truly thought, wow, he's just amazing. And I said to him, I felt like I really wanted to open up, and I said, I feel very vulnerable, and I just want to open up. And I remember thinking that was the first time I ever felt that way, I guess because of fear, and the first time I ever used that word. And then I said, I really like the idea of being vulnerable, because it was something that I had not experienced before. So experience it, feel it. There's nothing to be ashamed of. And
it's not weakness.
No, it's not.
Remember that it is not weakness at all. Everyone has their vulnerable feelings, but to build on that, to be courageous, to be able to tell your story in the right way to the right people is beyond courageous. And once you start doing that, it's amazing how life starts to fall into place.
It's stepping through the door from fear to freedom.
Definitely. Definitely.
You're just walking right on through. It is a really beautiful way to put it. And you were talking before about trusting the universe. Let's talk about that. Because that's so important in our self-love and our growth, and it's very, very important. You know, I'm just feel like I want to say this, and in hindsight, if it's something that's something Lynn and I don't want, Lynn, let's just remove it. That's what editing's all about.
Yeah.
I'm trusting the universe big time with this self-love summit. Lynn is, as I said before, we spent time, I videotaped her, and it wouldn't be released out of the footage thing. Would not. It just would not release itself, so we're redoing it again. And this morning I woke up, and I just want to talk about this, because this is a little bit of vulnerability, but it's also shows self-love, how I feel about myself, and I think it's very important. And it's trusting the universe, which was one of the things Lynn and I, when we did our little notes right before we came on camera, we decided to talk about it. And not that this is about me, but I'll get into it. I opened an email from bed because I wanted to make sure that this is a Saturday morning. We're doing a fairly early shoot for me. And wanted to make sure Lynn was still on. And I read from one of the viewers that my look is not appropriate. But the thing is that I trusted the universe enough to do this and be authentic on who I am. And what I'd like to say is, if anybody feels uncomfortable with themselves, which I don't happen to feel uncomfortable with myself, but if anybody feels uncomfortable with themselves, look at it, be vulnerable, trust the universe, because you're God's perfect child, perfect reflection. So whether we edit this part out or not, I don't know. I'll see in the editing process. But Lynn, let's talk about somebody's depth of who they are. Let's get to the nitty-gritty, the depth, because there are a lot of women who feel shamed, which is a vulnerability part that they don't want to share. They feel like failures, which is one thing that you talk about. I think when you feel that, and that was the first time I've ever heard anybody write me to tell me about myself throughout my career. So, if
you're getting there, you're becoming very famous. When you start getting the hate mail, you know you've arrived.
Woohoo! Well, thank you, Father, because it's all natural. I can't help it, you know. I didn't know what to say to that list. So the point of being vulnerable and not being afraid to fail and not being who you are, if you're who you are, is where your success comes from.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt that who you are is where your success comes from, because when you were born, at the instant of your first breath, your guardian angel was right there. And she whispered in your ear your sole purpose for this lifetime. And then she took her finger, placed it here on your mouth, and said, shh. And this is why you have a little dip right here in your upper lip, to remind you that you have been told what your sole purpose is for this lifetime. And now you have to go forth and discover it, because it's subconscious. It's unconscious. And part of what you do in this lifetime is find it, discover it, and then live it. However, you are really living it unconsciously before it becomes conscious. But you just don't realize it. Right. And all this crap and stuff gets in the way, which we think it's doing, but really it's the stepping stones to you living what you were meant to live in this lifetime. So yeah, we have to learn who we are, and a huge part of that is learning your gift. And your gift is always something to share with your fellow human beings to help uplift them. My big dream goal of all time is to uplift everyone with whom I come in contact.
That's beautiful.
So my part of my soul purpose, which is to lead people to discover their true value, is uplifting them.
And you do.
I'm not going to be able to do it every time. Sometimes I'm going to be cranky. I'm going to be a bitch. Something's going to cross my path.
Really? Lynn?
You know?
Yeah.
But that's life. That's the way you are. And then you make some amends if you've ticked somebody off or you've been particularly nasty to someone you're living with.
Right.
And you just go on, and you'll take a step or two backwards. Don't expect yourself to be perfect.
That's life. We're spirit. We're spirit beings in a human body, so we're coming always, constantly, spirit, body, spirit, human.
Yeah.
Spirit, body, spirit, human, and we're constantly, and how much, and our spirit is trying to absorb into our human, and our human is trying to absorb into our spirit. So, of course, we're going to constantly come up against each other. And isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
Because
how boring life would be if we didn't have all this variety.
Yeah.
We need it.
Right. And that's what makes us stronger. The more, like you said, I'm proud to be a horrible failure because the more we are not
it's
afraid.
Remarkable.
Okay, sorry, remarkable, and you are remarkable. The more we work at being ourselves and have failures, the more we learn how to adjust our thought concept. And that's what I'd like you to talk a little bit about, besides, because all of it is trusting the universe. Everything is perfect right now. And when we understand that is when we can go forward and proceed and be and do exactly what we're meant to do, our life purpose, right here.
Exactly.
I love that you said that. I remember you said that before, and I just, when you said it this time, I'm like, yay, she talked about that again.
So, trusting in the universe. Now, you can take whatever word is comfortable for you and use it in place of the word universe, but I like to be universal, so that's exactly why I use it. And I actually work a lot with my clients with the universal laws as written by Raymond Hollywell in his book that he wrote in the 1960s. And I had the great luck to come across, well, it wasn't luck, we know that, but in the 1980s, and I still have my copy and I still refer to it. So it's all about aligning with these laws of the universe. And it starts with trust. So there's some points that we can remember about trusting the universe. And in point one is you can trust in the promise that no life experience is a waste. You never go back and say, oh, if I'd never done this or if I'd only done that. It's just a waste. That is a waste. That's a waste of energy. Because everything that happens to us has a reason for us to learn from. So every life experience has value, and that's my life philosophy. Every life experience has value. We might not be able to see it when we're in the middle of the crap, but in hindsight, we will. Point number two is you can trust in the promise that the only time that you have any control over your life is the present moment. The past is for learning. The future is simply a mystery, which we can make plans for. Of course, we need to make plans and go forward because one of our primary motivations on life is to grow. We need variety, and we need to grow. We need to contribute. There's so many, well, those wonderful 6 basic needs of the human being that Tony Robbins teaches are wonderful. So the present moment is the only time that you can do something or think something that's going to make a difference to your life. And I'm always saying to my clients, come back to the present moment.
That is the hardest thing for people to get a concept and to do. I had heard that my whole life. You know, my family is very metaphysical. Some of them were. Not all of them.
Yeah, why do your family?
Exactly. And I remember hearing that. And then, you know, of course, we've all heard in the last 5 years Eckhart Tolle and about living in the now. And when we do live in the now, wow. Whoops, that's his book, isn't it? Or something like that.
It'll come to me.
Now
Now is one of the big
Yeah.
On
There's
his
also another author who is a spiritual writer named Brian Pegrossi, and he has the Now of Wow, or the Wow of Now, something like that. So, anyways, I guess that's what was in my head. But the whole thing is living in the moment now, because that's where we create, that's where we love, that's where we're at peace, that's where we find our growth. Hindsight is the history. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. The present is beautiful. I mean, the future is beautiful, and so the past and the future are kind of like dreams, because they're not here, but we can think about them on occasion. But living right here in this moment. That means when somebody, would you agree with this, Lynn? When somebody upsets you, or when your business isn't going right, live in the moment. Find the solution. Don't give up.
Yeah.
Failure is not, you can laugh at it because you become less and less and less of a failure as you learn to be in the now and learn to not have the overwhelming picture of your whole life. If you're focused on what is present right now and what I need to deal with, how am I feeling? How can I better serve myself, my family, my friends, mankind, whatever it is, you can get your answer in that moment. Part of this, our summit's called the Self-Love Summit, How to Align to the Divine, Raise Your Inner Child, and Bring Clarity and Love to your life. That's how you do it. That's the secret right there, is living in the now, is how you stick to being aligned to the divine, re-raise and not be afraid of your inner child, because, as Lynn was saying, failure is what? That's our child getting all upset that we can't, that we didn't make it, that we can't do it. So what? There is a solution. If we listen, the divine will tell us.
Yes. Yeah. And those, you were mentioning about the past and the future being dreams. And they can be the most wonderful dreams, or they can be nightmares. It depends on what life you shine on it.
Exactly.
That's not what it really is. So,
absolutely. And those of you who have had very, very trying or abusive childhoods, maybe abusive adolescence and adulthood, or miserable, you can reverse that immediately. Not just because it's self-love, but it's your divine right. All of this goes back to the divine. And when we are not afraid, I had, which some of you will have read, heard, and some of you will, but I've had one of the most horrific childhoods, but also it was beautiful. And I'm not afraid of what was or anything, because it allows me to offer others, in the beauty of my knowledge and what I gained, a helping hand. Just like Lynn's story, as she was saying, it helped her to be able to say, okay, this is a lie. I'm stepping out of that lie and I'm stepping into greatness. So it's how we want to handle and serve. So
I can spend the rest of my life going, woe is me, and feeling like a victim. Yeah. Or I can take the lessons learned and turn it into something, as you say, beautiful. And take my life purpose and make my mission to be a coach extraordinaire for these women. So, do you want me to go on with more of the trust?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Point 3. You can trust in the promise that you never, ever have to settle. You never have to die with your soul song unsung. That is the saddest thing. Whenever I even say that, I get a lump in my throat. The fact that someone would die without their soul song unsung is extremely sad. So you never have to settle. Please don't settle for less than what you deserve. Get help if you need it. You probably will. And go forth. Go forward.
Settling is out of fear.
Oh, definitely.
That you cannot be a dreamer to imagine an amazing life that you want. So
Yes.
absolutely don't settle. Because what was your favorite thing when you were a child? To dream. To create amazing fantasies. Life is not a fantasy. We create it.
I was so fortunate. I got to grow up without television. There was no TV. There was no internet, no computers, no electronic toys. I grew up with my imagination. And I look back on what I did as a child and what children today cannot do. And I am really very grateful, very grateful for my childhood.
You know, and this is just my own idea out there. You know, Lynn, I was just thinking when you said that, we should, I guess it's for each family member to mandate it or not, but that's right. I think if I had another child, because I have two that are just getting grown up, if I had another one, I think that I would do something like that. I think that I would not keep them in a cave, but I would incredibly limit their, I don't even own a TV now, you know. Yeah, it's like I don't want to.
I don't want
books, there's conversation, there's philosophy, there's other things. But yeah, I remember that computers were just coming out when I was hitting my late teens. You know, I got married at 18, and we had our first computer like 2 or 3 years later, and that was in the early 80s, and which was still a long time ago to have that. But that, you're right, it was amazing to have the life of being able to read and imagine as opposed to having our minds filled, and then face this world of wow. Because when you grow up in it, granted, a lot of people are becoming baby genius, you know, creators of programs and stuff, but the wow is not as much there because they've lived in it, you know. When we've seen the change over the last blank years,
oh yes,
it's amazing. It truly is. It's wonderful. So trusting.
Our next point in trust is you can trust your spirit voice. I named her Iona for some reason. I don't know why. It just came to me one day. Answers come from the heart, not the head. Our hearts are the direct line to source, and source promises it will always guide you to the right answers. So you can trust your spirit voice. When you get that hit right here, do not allow your head to say, well, maybe I could do it this way, or maybe I shouldn't do that, or, oh, that's a bit scary, or you don't talk yourself out of the hit that you get here. Trust that voice.
Yeah.
And then the fifth point is you can trust in the promise that everything worth having in life will involve some risk. Be willing to take it from a place of trust, not fear and not doubt, because risk aversion comes from fear, and fear kills innovation. So, yeah, that's a toughie, but you can trust that. Everything in life is worth having and involving a bit of risk. I do have a bonus point on trust, though, and that is you can trust in the promise that you don't have to do everything alone. You know, ask the universe to guide you. In my case, I sought coaches for help. And the universe, of course, but in human form, coaches. The coaches have saved my life. Business coaches, relationship coaches. I know a lot of people listening to this interview now also listen to Jeff
Lawton the other day.
Jeff Lawton. And he's been one of my coaches. And he's an incredible genius. I've also had health coaches. They've all enriched my life. They've taught me, they've guided me, they've shown me, and they've helped me reach goals that I didn't even know I had. We can't do everything alone, so reach out for help. That's another thing you need to do is trust in the fact that you want to get help.
And it's so much more fun, you know? And just because it's not a doctor who went to school for 8 to 12 years, the point is that those of us who teach what we teach, or anybody who teaches what they teach, it's because they've lived it for so long. It's inherently ingrained in them. So that's why we become teachers of what we love in life. So the experience is brilliant there.
Yeah, and there's one of the, speaking of the experience, I've often laughed at women when we get together and we talk about a male obstetrician. And we think, okay, he's doing his wonderful, brilliant job, and we need the help of these people during times like having children, having babies. But it's all coming from his head, and probably there's some empathy coming from his heart, but he's never given birth. So he cannot know all of the inner, outer, and physical, mental, emotional feelings of giving birth. So people who have coaches, in all the coaches I've ever met that were really great source-related coaches have had incredible life experiences that they have turned into teaching.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Before we move on to anything else, I'd like you to go back through the trust, and you had different, you had a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a bonus. So would you go through those, because we were having fun breaking them down.
Okay, so you can trust in the promise that no life experience is wasted, okay? Every life experience has value. You can trust in the promise that the only time that you have any control over your life is the present moment. You can trust in the promise that you never have to settle. You can trust your spirit voice. And you can trust that everything worth having in life will involve some risk. And lastly, the bonus point is that you don't have to do everything alone.
Have you written about this in a book form or anything, or a report?
I think it was in a report somewhere at one time.
Yeah, you should find it, because truly it is beautiful. It hit me this time differently than it did when you and I first talked. And I love that. So that's my homework for you. Get your book written.
I have a book written, but I'll write another one.
Okay, good. Yeah, we're all about not rewriting, but continuing. Yeah, exactly.
I'll just tell you quickly that I was writing as a young child. My mother actually, it's on my blog right now. It's the first story I ever wrote. It's called The Life of Mr. Clock. And bless my mother, she kept my stories and she typed them out. And I found a couple of them in her cedar chest after she passed. So,
that's really sweet. That's really, really sweet.
I've been a writer since I was a kid.
So, also your concept of your mom has shifted after she passed, probably, and you found elements of her life and her love of you that maybe she couldn't express because she was in pain.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, beautiful.
Through it all, I loved my mom.
Of course.
It was very difficult at times, but I always loved her, and I always knew she loved me. Always. And she did her very best. She did the best she knew how to do, and she really, really worked hard and tried very hard. And I love her today. And I know that she'll greet me when I pass over, and I will love the reunion.
Yeah. And it's beautiful because what you've done is you've also done forgiveness in a way, and just like me, I've had to. I used to say I love my mom, but I don't like her, and that's why we don't have a in-depth relationship anymore.
Right.
But over the last couple of years, I've realized she has really, and it's funny because life brings things up. I know when I had my first frustrating time as a mom, I think it was 20 years ago or 19 years ago, I remember saying to myself, wow, but I chose to handle things differently,
Yes.
but I had much respect for her. So it's all a part of the trusting the process is how our heart releases into forgiveness too.
She did. She performed her purpose, whether she knew she was performing it or not. She may not have gotten into her soul purpose, but her human purpose was to act as a teacher for me, of course. And without that, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today.
Right. Which is your soul purpose?
Exactly.
So that's beautiful. Wonderful. You also have a free gift for everybody. Would you like to talk about that?
I do.
Yay.
It's about that book I wrote, actually.
Yay.
This is the solid version. It's called Inspirational Goaling.
Beautiful.
And if you go to my website, you can get it, all close to 200 pages of it for free, but it's not an e-book, it's an iBook. And the difference is that there's videos in it, there's audios in it, there are interactive exercises in it, and it has a phenomenal story that runs through it. And it's a story, it's all about my new perspective on goals. I feel that the way we've been taught about goals in the past is definitely not suitable for the shift in consciousness that our planet is going through right now, and definitely not a feminine energy bent to it. So that's what I've done. I've changed that. And the story that runs through is how it actually came to be, the book. I was in, I was in Kathmandu, Nepal, volunteering as an English teacher for Buddhist monks for several weeks. And while I was there, I met the most incredible, darling, beautiful little spirit of a dog, which I brought home with me.
To the United States.
To Canada.
Yes. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Are you in Canada?
Yeah, I'm a Canadian. I'm a Canuck.
Oh my gosh, this whole time I thought you were an American.
Well, I am half of the year because we winter in Arizona. So I like to say I'm half and half.
Okay.
But my passport says Canada.
Yes, okay. Wonderful.
So I brought my beautiful little girl home. I'm going to show her to you
because I've met her before.
I know. Can you
beautiful.
See her?
Yes.
Atma?
Oh, look at her.
Hey, sweetheart. Come here, baby girl. Come here. Say hello. Hi.
Aww.
You need a haircut. Can Bibba see you?
Yes.
Yes. You need a haircut. I love you. I do. You're my little girl. Yes.
So sweet, honey.
Yeah. Atma is a Nepali word that means spirit or soul.
I love that.
And when I first saw her in the garbage with no hair and fleas and dirty, filthy and skinny, she looked at me with those eyes and I saw her soul in those eyes.
I love that. I love that. You know, that you say that and people are like, oh, animals don't have souls. Come on, you guys. We have a cat now. I was giving her a shower yesterday, or giving her a flea bath yesterday in the shower, and instantly I said to her, we've been together in Egypt. And it was just... You know, I knew that there was a connection between us, and I couldn't feel it. But she was screaming in the shower. But then the moment I picked her up, she was supple. I mean, this cat was soaking wet, full of shampoo. She looked into my eyes, and she just relaxed.
Aww.
And cats don't do that.
I know. Actually, I had a cat like that, and it's the brother to this one over here.
Oh, hello, baby.
Thank goodness, because when he's awake, he hollers. I'm sitting here with a bag of treats beside me in case he started hollering, or you just throw them on the floor and keep busy for a while.
That's so sweet. Lynn, we are out of time. But thank you for sharing your babies, your life, and I love that you're so free-spirited that you travel and you come to the States and you created the life you want. And thank you for taking the time to meet with us and me today, because the footage would not release itself.
That's quite all right. We know that there's reasons for all of this.
Exactly.
As frustrating as it may be.
Exactly. I feel like today it was something that blessed me even more. So, and you know, we spoke when we first got on camera. So,
absolutely.
Thank you so much. I honor that. Thank you.
It's been my honor and such a pleasure. And you are an absolute gift. You're a doll. I love you.
Thank you.
Namaste to you and everyone.
Thank you. You too. Thank you all for joining us for another segment of the Self-Love Summit.